Welcome to another episode of V4Veganism. This is a very special episode today. We are here with vegan activist Ed Winters, aka Earthling Ed. He is from the UK, and we are so thankful to have you here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you guys don't know Earthling Ed, right after this, you need to go over to his YouTube and subscribe to him because he has some amazing videos. So before we get into your activism, which is incredible, how did you even get inspired to become vegan? Because I know you weren't always vegan.
Right, that's a good question. So my vegan journey began 4 years ago, almost. It was it was May 2014.
Okay.
I came across this story. Basically, it was about a truck carrying 7,000 chickens crashing on the way to a slaughterhouse in Manchester in England. And I remember reading the story, and I was really horrified because hundreds of the birds died on the impact alone. I think in total it was like 1,500 of the birds died just on the impact. But what disturbed me more than the ones who died were the ones who were still alive, but they had like broken bones and broken, wings, and they were mutilated and they were suffering on the side of the road, and they were alive. And I thought, my goodness, these animals must be in so much pain. But it kind of dawned on me that the only reason they were there in that first place is because I ate chicken flesh. I loved KFC and ate chicken breast at nearly every meal, and because chicken was like my go-to meat, Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of dawned on me in that moment that I was a hypocrite because I was feeling sorry for those animals. Yeah, they were there because I paid for them to be there. So I went veggie, and then my partner was saying they should watch Earthlings. You have to watch this documentary Earthlings. And then one morning we sat down and we watched it together, and that was it really. And we decided we had to go vegan because the magnitude of the suffering was more than just meat, and even more than just dairy and eggs. It was clothing, leather, wool, silk, down. It was shampoos and shower gels, and circuses and aquariums and everything. And I thought, my goodness, this exploitation is so huge, and going vegan is really the only way that we can reduce our impact towards animals, in a significant way.
Yeah, I always think it's amazing to hear people say, I only went vegan like this short time ago, and then to know that they are also activists, because that takes a whole other leap to, I have plenty of vegan friends that are not activists.
Yeah.
What inspired you to kind of take that extra step as well?
So that's a good question as well. So that happened 2.5 years ago. I became an activist, and my kind of reason for becoming an activist was I'd just seen the documentary Cowspiracy, and I was at university at the time studying, and I went to university the next day and I said, I've seen this documentary Cowspiracy, it's incredible, like the things we're doing to animals is destroying our planet, you should all watch it.
You were like up on the cafeteria table.
It felt that way, like I was my first voyage into preaching, and I was just saying this, and this girl came over to me and she said, the soy farming is really bad for the environment. And I looked at her and I didn't know what to say because I'd never heard this before. And I was forced to think to myself, is my consumption of tofu really, that, big an issue? But I didn't know what to say. So she looked at me and she looked super smug because she knew that I'd kind of eased her conscience, and she was going to go away now thinking she could eat animal products because it was my consumption of soy that was destroying the environment, not her consumption of cow flesh or indeed any animal product. So and that kind of feeling of like smugness, that look in her face, and knowing that I'd been a part of allowing her to eat animals or animal products with that eased conscience annoyed me so much that I realized I had to learn as much as I could so that when people asked me questions, I'd know how to respond better. And then having that information, I felt I needed to do something with it because I felt that being silent was being complicit, and allowing others to continue their ways was still an injustice to the animals because I should be speaking up on their behalf. Like if it was me in their situation, I'd want them to do for me, So I kind of researched a lot of it and then realized I needed to speak up about it, and that was 2.5 years ago I started doing that. Yeah.
So I actually found out about you, I guess last summer. It was the Animal Rights March, and we had actually put out the Animal Rights March video for New York.
Amazing.
So the London one popped up and I saw your speech, and you spoke with so much passion, so intelligently, and in this way that it was so dire. We are in such a dire need for everyone to really get on board with what we're saying, and it was so inspiring to me, and I was kind of like, who is this person? And then so I went to your page and I started watching your videos, and I realized you had these videos where you call out some of your trolls. I guess.
Right. Yeah, right.
But you had said I guess you know, for lack of a better term, my YouTube just kind of blew up recently.
Yeah.
When was that because of the animal rights march, or was it before that happened?
I'm trying to think what triggered that off really. I mean, when I started my YouTube, which was 2.5 years ago, it felt like I spent a lot of work in, and that progress is really hard to get. And I kind of just got really lucky at one point because some of the street interviews I was doing at the time, you know, people really started to enjoy them. And around the animal rights march time, it just became like that time where I think the march was a really big moment, you know, globally for, you know, New York and indeed for London, because it was such a signifying moment for us as activists. You know, we all felt so empowered, and I think that kind of encouraged a lot of people to kind of look at activists because they were looking at their own activism journey and they wanted to see what other activists were doing, and which kind of led them to my channel and other people's channels that do similar things. And I remember around that time, it was just, I think it just kind of happened really well that I put some kind of videos I was really proud of out, and people seemed to respond really well to them and shared them, and I was really, you know, grateful for that, I guess. You know?
Yeah, well, I think, and you know, for people that don't know about your channel, the big thing that you do is the street activism, and you kind of go out and you just confront people and you ask them these questions, which gives me agita. It's a, you know, Yiddish term for an upset stomach, and I have a hard time. I have to watch a lot of your videos on silent.
Yes.
Just because I don't know, for whatever reason, listening to them with the sound makes me upset.
Oh yeah.
But so how did you decide, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and then when you first went to do it, like, was that really nerve-wracking?
It was. I mean, sometimes when I see other people's street interviews, I have to kind of like watch through like shielded eyes, because it's horrible sometimes, right? And it can be really aggravating, can't it? It really can. So I totally feel you on that one. I started doing my interviews. It was about 2 years ago. So I think it was like April, May. So just over 2 years ago, in 2016. And I was really nervous about doing it. I was terrified. I just got a text from a friend and saying, "Oh, we're going to go to Camden in London and do some interviews. Would you like to come along?" And I remember thinking, oh, you know, this is a big thing. Like I'd never done anything like this before. I'd never been to an outreach event. I'd never spoken to public about veganism. So this is my first voyage into that. And anyway, I decided I'd go along because I didn't think I had anything to lose from doing so. And I had this conversation with an American couple, and they were on holiday in London, and it went really well. And they were super polite and really friendly. And I remember thinking, this isn't that bad. You know, I can do this again, because people seem to respond really well. And I had a blast doing it. So it kind of went from there, and there's an evolution, because I started off quite angry. The first interview I did, because I was so nervous, I was really kind of hesitant, and I was quite laid back, and I didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable. But when I did them a few times, I guess it's almost like an arrogance came over me, where I was like, oh, you know, I'm a bit more like confident at it, and so I became a bit angrier, and I took that out on people, and I had to reflect, because I realized they weren't going very well.
Right.
And there's been evolution of kind of like me assessing the videos and looking at what went wrong and what didn't go wrong, and I realized that I was coming from a place of a bit too much anger, because I just started out my journey. I'd learned so much information, and I was talking to people who were justifying harming animals, and I was like, but you know, I think a lot of us have had those moments where we felt anger, and that's kind of overtaken our activism, or overtaken our advocacy at least. And it's been really interesting to kind of document that, and I look at some of my older videos and I'm like, oh, you know, I should have done this differently. And that's what I really like about activism. It's a journey, and we're always learning from it, you know, the conversations we had, or the things that we've done previous, and we just keep trying to do that a little bit better each time and learn from our mistakes. And I was very nervous at the beginning, and that kind of changed into a bit of anger, and now that's evolved into something a bit more, I hope to be effective at least. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think something that is very effective and something that's unique to you is you are very kind of mild-tempered. At least that's the way you come across to most of us that are watching.
Right.
You know, you're very mild-tempered and sort of soft-spoken, and it's very different from the way that most activists approach their activism.
Right.
And it's sort of a refreshing thing to see. Have you always been this way, or did you work on it? Do you meditate? Like, what makes you kind of very like low key?
Right. I used to meditate, but I stopped quite a long time ago. And I guess, as I say, I started off a bit more fiery. Fiery, I don't know if that's the right word. Angry, I think is probably the right word. I started off a bit more angry, and I was a bit more cutthroat of how I talked to people. And I just realized it wasn't effective, and I wanted to find out what was the most effective way of doing it. And thankfully for me, it was kind of just adopting kind of how I naturally like to speak to people, because I enjoy conversation, and I like speaking to people, because I think we can learn so much from each other, and that conversation is so vital to our own development as well as their own development as well. So I kind of reflected on that and thought, you know, how am I going to get through to people? What would have worked for me? And I realized it was just being logical and rational and using simplicity and just being so objective about it and just really showing people the reality of what happens. That's what would have worked for me. And I thought, well, that's what I should do for other people as well. And it dawned on me that when I got angry at people, it's because they'd said something to me that I didn't know how to respond to. So they'd give me an excuse, I don't know, like circle of life or food chain or whatever it was, and I wouldn't know how to respond. So I'd get angry at myself, which I'd then take out on them because they'd made me feel that way. So the more I practiced and the more I kind of took time to research and learn more, the calmer I could become, because it became more second nature and it became just a lot more comfortable because I always knew what to say back, or I always had an idea of what to say back. So that's how I try and remain kind of grounded and a bit calmer in those conversations, is just because it becomes repetitive and you hear the same excuses over and over again when you have conversations. Then we're all used to hearing the same excuses. You get thrown at them, or you have them thrown at you enough, and eventually it becomes just a bit easier to respond to them. And I always think of the animals as well, and it seems a little bit counterintuitive, because if you think of the animals, you think your emotions might get the better of you and you could let into that kind of frustration, but I always think the animals need us to be the best advocates we can be in that moment, and what they need is for us to be kind of that calm and just logical and rational. And when we react sometimes from a place of anger, it can often be self-serving, like it makes us feel good, but it doesn't help in the long run. So whenever I feel that way, where I want to lash out or I want to do something, I think of the animals and it grounds me, because I think I'm here for them, and they don't want me to be self-serving and egotistical. They need me to just be a little bit more kind of reassured and calm and just respond properly, I guess, or at least what I deem to be proper.
Right. Well, and in the end, lashing out with anger doesn't really make you feel better anyway. You kind of walk away from that feeling, kind of icky and even more angry, and then you're angry with yourself for getting angry. You're
right. It's a vicious circle where it gives you that instant kind of satisfaction, but in the long run, you're right, it doesn't help.
Yeah, I don't know if you experienced this in the UK, but we have like real life trolls that will come to our events, especially in New York. In New York, it's very easy to get here, it's very easy to get around, so we have this one guy in particular, and I know he has his own YouTube page, but I've never checked it out. And what he will do is come and eat raw meat in front of us.
I've seen that video. I've seen a video of him doing that.
You've seen him doing it, okay. Do you have anything, have you ever experienced anything like that?
No. I think American people are a lot more kind of wear their hearts on their sleeves a lot more than we do in Britain, and it seems more in their temperament to do something like that. We're a bit more reserved, I think. Yeah.
That's actually my next question would be, perceived differences from, because you've been here before, this isn't your first time to the United States, so activism here as opposed to activism in the UK, and kind of do you notice like a big difference? What are the differences?
I wouldn't say I notice like a particularly big difference. The conversations are often the same. The religious arguments used a lot more here than in Britain, but that's just the culture of religion here. But generally the arguments are more or less the same, But what I will say is I think people in America seem more open for like a good debate, and this is just from the time I've been here, I've had some really great conversations that are heated, but they're not aggressive, right? They're kind of just really interesting, and they're really passionate and really involved. So I think that here in America, people are kind of more comfortable having that kind of conversation, and are more comfortable kind of generating that kind of discussion from people, even if they've never met them before. And I really like that. There seems to be that kind of confidence to speak and be truthful to how you feel, which I really admire, and I think works in our favour, because it creates those systems where you can have those really open and honest conversations. And that's not to say that doesn't happen in Britain, because it does, but I've really noticed that people are really happy to get involved, and sometimes we'll wade through other crowds to come and call you out, or what they perceive to be calling you out, and I welcome that, because I think that's a really productive thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, because here in the United States, especially as New Yorkers, and especially in our current political climate, we tend to kind of shun this country and what's going on, and look to like, oh, Europe is the promised land, like they have their shit figured out, So I actually do appreciate that you find that there is actually something that is a little more positive here, because I look at video from the UK, and a lot of it seems to me that you guys are on the forefront of a lot of things, and we kind of follow your lead when it comes to activism. So do you notice that at all, that like you guys are like really like pushing, and here in America then we're like, oh, they're doing that, okay, we're gonna do that too.
I mean, I think I'm so proud of what the UK is doing right now. The activism there is phenomenal, and the change is really tangible, like it's happening, you can feel it, and it's there. And that's not to say it isn't here, but I think we have an unfair advantage because our country is so much smaller, so we can rally people together. You know, the culture across the UK is, you know, is different, but a lot of it's the same. Whereas America is so vast that you can't work together as easily because you've got, you know, vegan's amazing, or veganism is amazing in LA and it is here in New York, but the space between is massive. And there's so much different culture and there's so much diversity in the US, you know, with all the different states and all the different ways of life, that it's a lot harder to get that one message through to everyone together because everyone is so different here. Where that's not to say there isn't differentiations in the UK, but we can work together a lot easier because all the big cities are, you know, 2-hour train journeys away or whatever. So we're doing amazing things in the UK, but I feel like we have a little bit of an advantage that you don't have here. So I think the work that you're doing here is so admirable because you are separated a lot by such vast amounts of space that we don't have the same issue for. But I think I am so proud of what we're doing in London especially, but also in the rest of England and Scotland and everywhere else, because it's just so unified and the community is really strong, and that change is, you can really feel something's happening there, which I'm excited for, so excited.